Hello and good afternoon, Xbox Nation. Welcome to this week's new episode of X Vlog Live. I'm your host, Mr. BoomStick XL, and today, folks, I had written an entire show talking about the ridiculousness known as Xbox going third party and some of the most let's say stout PlayStation players excited to potentially get Xbox games on their PlayStation, which is ridiculous, right? Just buy an Xbox. But we're going to get into that because that is not, in fact, happening. Tim Stewart, who is the CFO of Microsoft, sat down with investors. He answered questions for about 30 minutes. We're going to break down exactly what he said and bring the truth to the Xbox ideology of, well, they're not going third party. What's going to happen? Kind of like Netflix is eventually that Xbox app is going to be everywhere, but that doesn't mean that Gears of War is going to be everywhere. He was answering questions regarding the Activision Blizzard King merger, but we'll break that down. Now, we do have 3-Bit potentially joining us. He's going to see if he can jump away from work. Obviously, he's a developer, so we'll get him hopefully in a little bit. But I'm sitting down here with Cowboy Mav, actually, from Fun Speculation. Folks, I got to tell you, and I said this in the private green room, and I'm going to say it publicly. If you missed I think it was like 3 hours, dude. Like, I don't know how long it was, but I know
Yeah,
I
it's about
watched it.
3.
Yeah, I watched it twice. He broke down the Destin Legary original video about no Xbox tax, and then he broke down the live stream, which Destin caught some real shit for, and it was brilliant. And it was so good. I watched it twice. I encourage you to go check it out, Mav. What's going on, dude? How you feeling?
Oh, I'm pretty good, Boom. It's good to be here. I'm supposed to be on here. I don't know if it was last week or the week before, but I had technical difficulties. So it's thanks for sending a link again for this week, and I'm glad to actually be able to be here, bro. We're gonna have some fun, some awesome stuff to talk about. Yeah, I did do that Mavcast about Destin's video just because sometimes you just got stuff to say, and I felt like that was worthy to kind of break down. And there was just too many broken points that he was trying to make that I felt like were ridiculous, But at the end of the day, it is what it is. There's going to be lots of stuff to celebrate with Xbox and gaming here. Still the end of this year, and then going into next, and even surprise stuff happened today, like you talked about, man. So it's a good time to be a gamer, and happy to be here.
Well, I will say this: it's great to have you here. And look who's here, Mr. Developer
Oh
himself,
boy.
who's been dropping bombs left, right, and center. And folks, if you're not following 3-Bit on the socials, well, I'm here to tell you you're doing it all wrong because he had two fantastic posts. One, of course, talking about what we're going to kind of get into today, and that is Xbox going third party, which was ridiculous. But he also broke down in the most grandest way possible how, in fact, there is an inherent bias against Xbox known as the hashtag Xbox tax. 3-Bit, what's going on, brother? Welcome back.
Doing pretty good. Yeah, I've been posting lately.
You
Taking it
certainly
back
have,
to
man.
my
Your fingers got to be tired because we know you're a developer, so your brain's tired. But
yeah. I try to just bring in whatever my perspective is, and I'm glad people are enjoying my posts. I used to do a lot of little journalism back in the day, but yeah, it's been fun. Thanks for inviting me. It's always good to be with my bud Mav, and it's been a while since I've been on here, right? Boom Show. So appreciate you for inviting me, and yeah, some interesting topics today. Let's get into it.
yeah, we're going to get into it. But real shout out to Chris V, who's become a channel member. Chris, thank you so much for the generosity. Oh, there's my Metal Gear Solid ring going off. How unprofessional. Hold on just a second, folks, to get myself together here. Oh my God, how unprofessional. Usually I mute my phone, but there you go. Listen, we'll start off with a small tidbit. It's rampant news, but it's big news. And last night, while we were doing live on the air primetime gaming, which was a phenomenal episode, they dropped, and I say Xbox dropped Remnant 1 and 2 directly into Game Pass. I mean, talk about a stealth drop. Now, we had a Gaming Forte join us. Obviously, he's one of the founding fathers of primetime gaming. and he loves that game so much. It's his game of the year. Now, he does a lot of games this year, specifically in 2023, and he's calling it his game of the year. That's how good that game is, and more importantly, it dropped in the Game Pass. Mav, I'll start with you. I don't know if we as Xbox fans have been fed better than we have been eaten in 2023. I think that I don't even know how they can keep this up. And I got to tell you, we as Xbox gamers have really had a lot to play from Xbox Game Pass, not counting what's been dropped in there by first party. And again, with second half of the show, folks, we're going to talk about what's coming in 2024. If we get another 2024 like 2023 for Game Pass, I don't know how you're not a part of the service, Mav.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, it's Remnant 2 being there is pretty crazy, man. Because like this didn't come out with any announcement, so I think there was a mistake where they put it in there a little bit early or something like that. Because that's something you want to kind of shout from the rooftops.
I would have, sure.
Yeah, Remnant 2, like Remnant 1's been in there before, I believe. I'm not 100% on that, but Remnant 2 is one of the games that really stood out this year. It more of a double A kind of release, but this is like got this 3-player co-op and um kind of a Souls like co-op kind of experience or whatever. And I know a lot of the people on our channel really love that game. I bought it when it came out, and it's I gotta tell you the graphics, the gameplay, the character designs, all that kind of stuff is super top notch. Steel and Jasper and Pong kind of just barreled through the main campaign on that. Like it took them a few days, and that they absolutely loved it. And when they were all done playing it, they were like just couldn't stop talking about how amazing it was. Right. So it's crazy for a game like that to just hit without any kind of announcement or anything. You know, I think it's nominated maybe for one game award category as well. But I almost kind of have a feeling that this maybe would have been a Game Awards announcement at the Game Awards, and for some reason somebody was like, "Oops, put it in there." You know what I mean? Greenlit it maybe a little bit too soon. And at the end of the day, who cares? Because it's in Game Pass, and if you haven't played it, give it a shot because it's truly an awesome game. Now it is slightly in the more difficult category, especially if you're playing solo. I do recommend playing with friends, but it's a great game to do that with, man. So great get for Game Pass, and a huge win for gamers because even though it sold way more than Remnant 1, which is also in Game Pass, so if you like Remnant 2, like go back and play Remnant 1 as well. Even though it sold a lot more, there's still so many people that didn't try it or give it a chance at all. And it's definitely deserving of a large audience. It's that high quality.
Yeah. I mean, again, another big, ginormous Game Pass drop. So I want to bring 3-bit on the conversation because this is really a big deal. But there is another layer to this. And I say that because we all know, and you guys have talked about it on Fun Speculation, right? That the Embracer Group is in a bit of a pickle, right? They are, unfortunately, had significant layoffs at Crystal Dynamics, at Eidos Montreal, at the Remnant 2 studio as well. Now, obviously, we have said this before, and actually, Pong Soul talked about this many times. Lars, who is the owner of Embracer, is very good friends with Phil Spencer. I mean, that's a fact. And I think we're all on the same mindset that at some point, Crystal Dynamics and Eidos Montreal are coming home to Xbox. They're working on, besides working on Tomb Raider, which I think that IP is coming home as well. I think there's a deal being brewed right now as we speak. It's just my personal opinion, but it's safe to say because Crystal Dynamics is working on Perfect Dark and Eidos is helping with Fable, it makes sense to bring them in-house. Plus, they're an amazing pair of developers. Your thoughts on this deal happening quickly, 3-bit, because of an injection of cash that right now Embracer Group needs?
Right. and I guess you guys can tell me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure all this stemmed from Embracer thinking they had more cash than they did, because they were initially like, oh, we're about to get this deal, we're about to get an influx of money from this other publisher, and then they backed out, and then they're like, oh, but we already bought these other. Is that kind of
I
where
mean,
it stemmed from?
it's certainly possible. I mean, from what we have heard, it was an investment group from Saudi Arabia
And they
that
pulled out, right?
they basically were not handshake kind of, hey, we're gonna invest in Embracer, and at the last minute they pulled out of the deal, and I think it was supposed to be for like $1 billion or something. It was supposed to be
Two.
$2 billion.
Yeah,
Okay, so it wasn't two. I
a
wasn't sure.
there was like a $2 billion deal that they were counting on that had
Mhm.
kind of fell through. And it's potential that it fell through because of some of the performance of some of the games like Saints Row that they had released and stuff like
Mm,
that. So
Mm.
they didn't kind of maybe lost a little bit of faith in the ability for them to get a return on that.
Right.
That's just speculation, right? Like
right.
who knows
I
exactly
mean, that's
what
where I
happened, but
think it stemmed from. Like, I do remember that the reports of that. So whenever I think about Embracer in trouble, to me, I just remember that initial situation, and I feel like they're still recovering from relying on that flux of potential
Mm.
cash. Um, I do think that with Embracer, it does. It's unfortunate because they have so many amazing IP.
Yep.
With Crystal Dynamics and Eidos Montreal, and there's a lot of talent at those studios, and I feel like it would be a waste to just start firing all these different developers, letting them go to other studios when they already have a DNA at these studios. Crystal Dynamics and Eidos Montreal, like they have a really good understanding of how to do their specific type of games. So I do hope that Microsoft or someone, I mean, so far Microsoft has been purchasing studios outside of ABK where they're, well, actually ABK too, where they're almost in trouble in a way.
Yeah, of course. That's why they came to them.
Exactly. I think people forget about with Bethesda, when they purchased them, they were in a state where they had to start stepping outside of their usual games. And like, okay, maybe we got to start implementing more multiplayer features, or adding in more DLC to games. It was like sort of a drop in quality because they had to make cash outside of their traditional model of games. And I'm talking about like Wolfenstein and some other games where people are like, this is not what Bethesda usually is doing. But they had to start changing their model, start changing a little bit of their DNA to make more cash, and Microsoft purchased them, so now they could kind of be who they are as a studio. So I'm hoping something similar happens here, where Microsoft can step in like, hey, we see you're in trouble, to sort of still maintain their DNA as a studio. Because right now, it seems like they're in a stage where they're just trying to make money. Like, Embracer is like, oh shoot, let's figure out a way for us to make a quick flow of cash. And if you're making Crystal Dynamic do things outside of what they're normally known for, we get situations like Avengers and stuff stuff like that, where it was pretty good. You could see how good they are
The
as a
story was
studio.
excellent. It's just
Yeah.
everything that was baked on top of it that ruined it.
Yes. So if you get a studio like that where you can embrace for them to like do what they want and do what they're good at, that you get a winning studio. And I really do hope that Phil Spencer or someone can jump in and save that studio. It'd be a shame if they are just dying. So.
Yeah, no, I think that the phone call has already been made. I think that they are, specifically and potentially waiting until next year. I don't know. I mean, again, the anything over 100 million is going to invoke regulatory eyes, and right now, I don't know if they want to get in front of the especially back in front of the FTC. Now, these deals, it's not going to be $1 billion deal. But obviously it's going to get them back in front of regulators unless they could figure something out. And obviously when you start talking about potentially bringing home some IP, like for instance Tomb Raider, bringing home Lara Croft as first party. That would be huge. There's Deus Ex. There's a ton of IP that were purchased from Square Enix that would find a great home at Xbox. So we don't know what's going to happen, but Remnant 2, 1 and 2 in Game Pass, just exploding the service once again. If you're not already vested into it, and I know that there's some people that are still holding out because they are fans of physical versus digital. You got to get involved. You got to stop holding your breath, because digital is here. And this service is only getting better. And a perfect example, they literally shadow dropped what is some people in the community are calling it their game of the year. That's a really, really big deal. But I want to move on to, because obviously that's just mini topic number one. I want to get into one of the main conversation pieces, and I'm going to go first to 3-bit on this, because you wrote a pretty lengthy piece on Twitter regarding this suggestion that Microsoft, or specifically Xbox, is going third party. I think it's the most ridiculous thing I've ever read. Now, Clockwork, who obviously we all know, and again, someone you absolutely should be following, posted a huge amount of information regarding exactly this. Because again, I'm just waiting for the websites, because we saw a lot of people in the community. You see Microsoft going third party. They don't spend $70 billion to go third party. What they're trying to do is become the Netflix of gaming. And where is Netflix, 3-bit? It's freaking everywhere. You can find it on your refrigerator, your phone, your PC, wherever there is a screen. Well, I'm going to kind of read real quick some of the cliff notes, if you will, from what Clockwork had to say regarding Tim Stewart. Now, Tim Stewart, if you don't know who he is the Xbox Chief Financial Officer. And during a Wells Fargo investment conference, he says that I do feel like the messaging here was a little bit all over the place. And Tim Stewart said this: Xbox's mission is to bring first-party experiences and subscription services to every screen that will play it, including PlayStation and Nintendo. Note, Microsoft wants to sell Xbox consoles, but at the same time, they somehow also want to be a third-party publisher. Now, this is coming from Clockwork. That's one way to give Xbox fans no confidence, I guess. Now, he goes on to say, explains that the move to Game Pass Core from Xbox Live Gold was motivated by the idea that paying for multiplayer feels antiquated. And also, this is now a note from Clockwork. So, they got the right idea that paying for multiplayer feels antiquated, and as a result, they created a new tier where you are paying for multiplayer. All right. And Tim Stewart goes on to say, we need consumer brands at Microsoft that are meaningful. And, of course, Clockwork responds with a note. It says, Xbox is that meaningful consumer brand at Microsoft. And Microsoft is actively lessening the impact the brand could have by being so defensive about your own content. Now, this was a 30-minute interview, and of course, this is coming the way of Clockwork. And he had some points from Tim Stewart, and he gave his own thoughts and theories, and that's why he said he kind of felt like the messaging was all over the place. But I was speaking to both Kay Asante and Everborn this morning regarding this, and I think their breakdown was something that I kind of sunk my teeth into, and that was that the way that Tim Stewart is not a gamer. He is not speaking. This is not meant to be heard by us, the people who play games. This was meant to be heard by people who are going to invest in the brand. That's what this was. This was an investments call. So what he's saying to them may not actually mean what it means to us. 3-bit, I want to get your take on this, because there is some cross messaging. I think what Tim Stewart was trying to say is that they want to get the Xbox Game Pass app on everything that they can. And if that means Nintendo and PlayStation, well, that means Nintendo and PlayStation. Now, we don't know exactly what that content would be. Is that because he said first party, and I'll read it again, folks. Xbox's mission is to bring first-party experiences and subscription services to every screen that can play a game. And he also, again, finishes it off with including PlayStation and Nintendo. Now, me personally, I don't care where the app goes because I'm playing on my Xbox. And if I want, I can play on my new OLED that I got. I have the Xbox Hub, and I can go and play with just a controller. I don't even need a console. So if it goes to PlayStation, which it won't, because PlayStation doesn't want it. They've already told us they don't want it. It's going to cost them a lot of money to be on that. It's going to cost PlayStation a lot of money to have that app on their service. That goes for Nintendo as well. See, I know there's a lot of hubbub 3-bit about, man, because my Xbox feels less valuable. Why? If you play on Xbox, you play on Xbox. What do you care if someone else can play the game anywhere else? Play where you want to play. Pay your $17 a month. Get value like we've seen this year. What's coming next year? And we're going to talk about that in the back half of the show. What are your thoughts on this Xbox third-party ideology?
Yeah, I mean, if you backtrack to people's mindset to Xbox even adding PC to the conversation, I remember there was sort of a backlash, like, what, you're expanding to PC? That was such a crazy thing back in the day. If you guys look at articles when Xbox first decided to add PC, it was seen as this crazy thing. Now people are starting to get used to that idea. My whole thing is just it's not anything that Phil hasn't sort of stated before, their importance of adding third party to the mix. I feel like this conversation keeps getting brought up every few months because an executive at Microsoft will say, like, hey, we're supporting PlayStation and Nintendo, and people sort of run with that as like, oh, all future games on Xbox are now third party. Oops, sorry. But that's not what I think he's saying. I think he's talking about, for example, their $70 billion purchase at ABK, and how with all the regulator bodies, how they were basically saying, hey, we are making deals with Nintendo, we're making deals with PlayStation and with the cloud, and no other competitor, Switch or PlayStation, are supporting other third-party platforms in the way Xbox is, because they're trying to essentially increase the ecosystem of Game Pass wherever you can find it. So wherever you're going to find Game Pass is where you're going to find their games. And I kind of like talked about it in my post, and I keep having to sort of reference this because I feel like people sort of misconstrued what that means. They think like, oh, that means Xbox is going to be a third-party publisher. In a way, they already are. If you consider Minecraft or Call of Duty, but they still hold certain things into account where they're like, oh, this is still like we still are having exclusives as a part of our model. And that can be sort of proven with like Hellblade 2, which used to be a third-party title, how they handled Psychonauts 2, which was on both consoles, but they only gave the Series X the native version. And then you had Outer Worlds, which was a third party, but now it's exclusive. So the exclusives are still a part of their model, but they are seeking opportunities of how else can they expand. Now you have different platforms, like they've tried to get Sony to do Game Pass, and how did Sony sort of react to that? They said no. And they also decided to opt out of their internet browser, right?
Yep.
There's no internet browser on the Sony device because they do not want Game Pass on their system. Even the PlayStation Portable device, they make it harder for you to go on the internet to access different Wi-Fi things, because you can't go on the browser on the PlayStation Portal. They do that because they don't want any hint of you playing Game Pass on their device. So Microsoft,
you know why that
knows
is, though? If you don't mind, I want to interject that just for context here, folks. Why wouldn't Sony want Xbox Game Pass on their platform? because it would, and this sounds like this would become right from for Mav. So I'm gonna quote you without you even saying anything. It would make their service look shitty because it is. Day and day games on the service for a competitor versus raking your players over the coals, charging you $40 more this year for a service that keeps getting. I'm sorry, some of the games have been really crappy. They've been really crummy. There's no day and date. There's no high profile indies. The last one was Sea of Stars, and Xbox got that as well. And past that, the last time there was anything worthy of a conversation was Stray, which is why I resubscribed last year to get Stray, because I was going to buy it anyway. And I'm like, well, you know what? I'll just get the service. And now, being that they charge $40 more, you know what I'm not doing? I'm not resubscribing to their service in February when my thing expires, because no, I'm not doing it. But please continue.
Yeah, but outside of that, of Sony kind of like preventing Game Pass from hitting their services, it Phil has stated multiple times that they're not a third party publisher, right? We've seen interviews of that. I feel like where people get lost in the sauce, where they're like, "Oh, look at what this guy just said," is the fact that Xbox is already doing things to support other platforms, whether it's future Minecraft games. We all know Minecraft Legends and future Minecraft games are most likely being supported on the Switch and PlayStation. We know that Call of Duty, most of the Call of Duty games in the future, they're pretty much contracted to be supported now on the Nintendo Switch, which hasn't happened in many years, and now on PlayStation devices going forward, even though that's first party. They're considered first party studios now. I think people forget that Call of Duty is now first party entity of Xbox. In closing, because I want to see what you guys sort of think about it. In closing, yeah, and other ABK games in the future, me, Mav, and everybody have been talking about it, but even before all this happened, like which ABK games are going to be exclusive. We find the majority of ABK games are probably going to be on other platforms, just because of how those games work historically, like Diablo and Overwatch or future games like that. It just makes sense for those to be multi-platform. But that doesn't mean every single game coming out of ABK would be multi-platform. So, I mean, it just goes into the model, in my opinion, of what they're already doing. They are already supporting other platforms more than the Nintendo and PlayStation, but it doesn't mean they're just all of a sudden getting rid of exclusives in general. There's still power to having exclusives, and they already proven that they're going to have exclusives in the future with Elder Scrolls, like, you know, and Indiana Jones. Those are all confirmed to be exclusives, and
yep.
So yeah, that's pretty much what I think.
No, I mean it's a good point. Like I said, I think you have to really take it at face value. Tim Stewart, yes, he is the CFO at Xbox, but also, just FYI, Phil Spencer is the head of Microsoft Gaming, and he will ultimately be the final say-so of what game goes to Xbox Game Pass if it happens to go on to another service. That would be Phil's call. That would be Sarah Bond's call, who is the president of Xbox. That would be Matt Booty's potential call. I think the three of them would sit down and say, is it better to have this as an exclusive? The answer is yes. Exclusives matter, folks. They absolutely do. And they are going to continue to listen. Like I said, at the end of the day, me as an Xbox Game Pass subscriber, I don't care where the app goes. But we know that it's not going to go to Sony, because it's ultimately going to make Sony's service look even crappier than we all know it is. They try to sell you a lemon by telling you that it's a golden apple, and it is not. Their service is just, when you compare it to Xbox Game Pass, it is lacking in many areas. Sorry. No day and date first party, which they honestly can't afford to do. Heck, we don't even know if they can afford to make consoles, because that is now the running rumor. And if anyone's going to go third party first, I could put it to you this way: and again, I'll come back on this show and admit it, but I would say that you would, out of the two entities, two platforms, you would be more likely to see God of War on an Xbox before you would see a Halo on a PlayStation. That's just my opinion. Mav, let's get your hot take on this, man.
Yeah, I gotta be honest and say this this whole talk that started yesterday is just completely pointless. It holds no value whatsoever. And I saw Clover's post, but people are just running with this conversation with the CFO and taking things completely out of context, because if you actually listen to the whole thing, which I know you did as well, Boom.
Yeah, it's about 30 minutes long.
Right.
Yeah.
He was answering questions specifically about ABK and what it means to Xbox, right? Like, and what their plans are. And the idea of that, like they were on trial for and all these different things, is that those games are going to remain multi-platform. So when they go and they talk about being on PlayStation and Nintendo, of course, the people out there that hate Xbox or whatever are just going to say, oh, you mean maybe Xbox is going to start putting everything on my PlayStation so I don't have to buy an Xbox? Oh, that'd be amazing. Yeah, no, it's not. That's not what it means. Just listen to Phil Spencer before. He said numerous times that Xbox is not a third-party publisher. Matt Booty, if you actually saw the leaks of the documents from Matt Booty, like he was the head of the studios, and he has probably some say-so in what's going on with some of the decisions, at least his input. He is a savage. This man wants nothing to be on your PlayStation. He would literally rather buy everything and see the PlayStation crumble in flames. That's his mentality, right?
Didn't he say in that email, we have the ability to outspend PlayStation out of business?
Yeah, that was Matt Booty, right?
Yeah, that was. I mean, dude,
Peaches, as he's known in the community.
So we have all these games now that are coming into Game Pass and all this stuff, and all of a sudden, the games that everybody's from that side were saying were crap. Oh, they just can't make a good game. Oh, they really. Even in Destin's video, there's a point where he's like, the reality is Xbox hasn't had any big AAA releases. Like, is it? Why do these people want them so bad then? Exactly. I don't understand this mentality that's gone on. It's not the reality we live in, yet people keep trying to paint this picture, and this picture is being painted in a way, Boom. It's not so much as like, oh, Xbox is going third party. They're trying to put that feeling out there. Xbox is getting out of the console space. That's what it's
that was a big running rumor. I mean, we're not gonna specifically say who said it unless you want to say it. That's up to you. But there were some pundits apparently that said that Xbox was getting out of the business, and it's just, listen, folks, no one goes out of their way and spends nearly $80 billion in the course of 3 years to acquire Bethesda and all of their studios, and now ABK with all of their studios, to then get out of the business. I mean, think about that. You really get your head examined if you are running with that narrative. This is crazy.
There's a lot of false information out there, a lot of disingenuous takes, a lot of people that are just spewing stuff. Now, Clover's post, like the post where he talks about the online portion, I agree with that. Like that's a little bit of like talking out of both sides of your mouth there. You know, like they didn't really get rid of paying for online.
They just restructured the name of it, so it looks like you're not just paying for online. Because look, you're paying for Game Pass.
So that was weird, you know, that he mentioned that in that interview. But like, which kind of also kind of leads you to think maybe he doesn't even 100% understand like some of all of that side as well, you know. But the conversation regarding third party and all that kind of stuff. Look, they have Call of Duty. They have Overwatch. They have Diablo now. They have Minecraft. Yeah, those games are going to be on those platforms, and they're going to bring some other games to Nintendo when they have a device capable of actually playing high quality games. At that point, that'll actually happen. But right now, that everything is kind of status quo with that stuff, right? And Phil Spencer said numerous times, which doesn't get talked about when he says this, right? It gets these same people that are trying to put out this fear of like, oh, Microsoft Xbox is going to put everything third party. Eventually, they're going to stop making consoles, all these kind of things. Those are the same kind of people always saying that kind of stuff. Completely ignore every single time Phil Spencer says, yeah, the console experience is still the core part of the Xbox ecosystem, or we understand that exclusives matter. They actually had to sit on trial and talk about the importance of exclusivity when they were trying to defend Starfield exclusivity on the stand. They had to do this. We already saw the leaked pipeline of games as well. All these different things. All of this stuff gets ignored. Instead, it's just this fear mongering about, oh, Xbox is going out of business in 2027 or this or that, and all these kind of different things. And it just doesn't make sense at all. Like every time Phil said, we would love a world where, exclusives weren't a thing, but we're not the ones that necessarily dictate that. It's PlayStation and Nintendo, so it's a core part of the business. It's important to the business, and we are going to have exclusives to our ecosystem, and that's just the way it is. So, will they have some things that are multi-plat? Right? Does ABK change that aspect some because they have more different things that are multi-plat? Yeah, it does. It helps them be in more different places, but you still have to have those identifiable brands that bring a face to your product, to your ecosystem, to get people to want to sign up for your service, as opposed to, oh, well, I don't have to have it because I can go somewhere else and just buy those games. I only care about one or two. That's why they keep investing in so many different products and so many different games, because the variety of it, the variety and the quality of all these different experiences are going to attract different gamers to sign up for Game Pass and to get in the ecosystem. And there will be on multiple devices. They're already on more devices than PlayStation, than Nintendo. They already are on more devices than any of those platforms. You can play games more places than you can on PlayStation, Nintendo. They don't need them.
Right.
They don't. People want to make this assumption that, oh, they can't survive without putting all their games now in the future on PlayStation or Nintendo because they're in trouble, or they're so
consoles
heavily
like the smallest market
into this, and they're not profitable. All these kind of false statements all the time, and it's just not true, like, whatsoever. So we'll see some things on PlayStation, Nintendo, and we'll see a lot of stuff that's exclusive, and they've already announced a lot of those that we have to look forward to in 2024.
Yep, and we're gonna actually get to that in a second. Real quick, New Type in the chat says no one spends $80 billion to keep those games on one console. So here's the thing, dude. Call of Duty, everywhere. Overwatch 2, everywhere. Diablo 4, everywhere. There's a lot of games that are everywhere, but you know what's not going to be on there? The new Prototype and the new Spyro, potentially, and the new Crash Bandicoot, because those are going to bring people to do what? Subscribe to the service. And the reason why you'll never see any of these games, or specifically the Xbox app on PlayStation, imagine they literally had 12 games as a service in development. They canceled 6 of them. The other 6 are probably going to die on the vine because they're not going to be good. Could you imagine PlayStation spending these millions of dollars on half-cooked, half-baked games as a service, and out of nowhere, an app brings you Grounded, Halo Infinite, and Sea of Thieves, all money-making games as a service that Sony wishes they had. And what does it ultimately do? You get all of that plus day one stuff for your subscription. And what does Sony do? They charge you $40 more. They give you crap games every month, and there's no day and date anywhere in sight. That's why you'll never get it, Game Pass app on PlayStation. And as for Nintendo, yes, they're going to have a new console next year. Yes, it's going to be as powerful as potentially a Series S, and that is awesome. But Nintendo doesn't need Xbox, and Xbox honestly doesn't need Nintendo. They both can exist on their own separate platforms, in their own separate universes, doing their own separate things as they've been doing for decades. And ultimately, where you're going to be able to play your Xbox games are on your console, because we know that they're working on another console, and not a mid-gen refresh either, because we're going to get to a super chat in a second that talks about that, and PC. That is where you're going to get your Xbox games. That's where Microsoft wants you to live, and that is where people are ultimately going to play and buy their subscription service. I hope that calms some of the fears, because I know there was a lot of talk about it yesterday. I'm actually very surprised we didn't see an IGN article saying, "Oh, that's it, Microsoft's done. You can find it on your PlayStation." I'm surprised.
There was all this talk too, like when PlayStation said that they're going more multi-platform in an actual interview and an article and all this kind of stuff. When they bought Bungie, who makes multi-platform games, and their future games are going to continue to be multi-platform and all this kind of stuff. It's literally the same thing, just on a smaller scale. It's so one-sided so many times, like with this stuff, and it really doesn't make a lot of sense. And it's just games media and phrasing things, taking things out of context.
People are using the evolving thing, Mav. We're like, oh, it's an evolving strategy. I've noticed a lot of content creators are moving.
I've seen a lot of people highlight that word evolving as if it's going to somehow shift in the next year into this. We're everywhere, and you Xbox fans, you mean nothing to us. We just want money. That's not the way it works, folks. And like I said, you also, in order to tango 3-bit, you need both parties to say we want this to happen. Sony has already said they don't want Xbox Game Pass on their platform, and you even brought up a great point. Their new handheld, which is basically as useless as two tits on a bull if you're not home, doesn't even have an internet browser.
Well, neither does the PS5, so that doesn't surprise me. And why does the PS5 have an internet browser?
They don't want you to play Game Pass.
They don't want Game Pass.
Exactly.
They took it out because it did have a browser, but as soon as Game Pass started kicking, they're just like, let's get rid of the browser. And then they said it was for security reasons.
Oh yeah. Well, their security is held together with bubblegum and tape anyway. So I mean, after the 2006 hack, I've never trusted Sony since. But
that's the stupidest thing too, because like there is a way to access a browser there, but you have to do like some workaround tricks. So like the hacker type that would try and use a web browser to break stuff or whatever, or it's still you can still access it. It's just not hidden to. It's just hidden to the average customer. Like all that stuff is just lies.
Yeah, it is. It's people looking to get clout and degrade. And the crazy thing is this. It's funny, and we're gonna get to the main topic of the show. What I find frustrating and aggravating is that the tap dancing that goes on to try and portray Xbox as this failing brand. I mean, has anyone on who that actually plays on a PlayStation that's involved in these conversations? I'm not talking about the normies. I'm talking about people that actually are in our business of work here, which is content creation. Has anyone taken the time to look at what a shitty year 2023 is for PlayStation? Like, if there was a platform that had the potential to go out of business, it's them. They have stepped on so many rakes. Their face is numb. They have no teeth left in their mouth. They have the self injury that they keep doing. They keep stepping in it and stepping it and stepping in it, and it's only getting worse. You think if you want to know why this is absolutely spiraling out of control, just look who's running SIE. Just look who's running PlayStation. It's SIE. It's Hiroki Totoki. He's a Sony guy. PlayStation is a separate entity. Yes, it's a part of the same company, but shouldn't Herman Holtz have taken over after Jim Ryan, didn't want to fly anymore? No, they have no faith in the leadership. That's why there's been so many people leaving PlayStation. That's why there's been the complete disarray on their plans to do what Jim Ryan had set forth, and that took years to get there. Their retraction to first party is going to take years, folks. That's why we don't know what's coming in 2024. Now, maybe they have something in 2025 outside of Wolverine. I don't know because they're not telling us. So if there's one platform you should be concerned about, PlayStation fans, it should probably be your own brand and not the Xbox.
Maybe that's why they want Xbox to be multi-platform, so they have some stuff to play next year.
Potentially, because I think we're going to be coming up on the conversation of PlayStation has no games and see how they like it. Well, we're going to get into some games that potentially are going to find the way not only to the platform but to Xbox Game Pass day and date. And folks, we heard today from Idle Sloth, the part human, part cyborg, who always seems to keep his listening ear to the floor. Well, he tweeted this morning, folks. The Australian rating board has rated Clockwork Revolution and Senuas Saga Hellblade 2 as rated R 18 plus due to high impact of violence, and South of Midnight as parental guidance or PG, mild themes and scary scenes. And obviously, this is a really big deal. Mav, I'm going to go to you first on this. Now, we all kind of knew that next year is going to levy potentially one of the best years for Xbox first party, especially when you consider new IP. Now, I've been banging the drum, folks. If you're following the channel for as long as you know, it maybe you're finding the channel this year, I've been banging the drum that after the showing of Clockwork Revolution by NXile, I said that game was done, or at least close to being done. Now, when you have a game that is rated, that means that game cannot be changed, because if you do change it, it has to be re-reviewed for the changes. So it's likely that even though some polishing is going to be needed to be done, the games are potentially done when they are rated this close to what's coming up next year. Now, I said we all know that Hellblade is coming next year. We just don't know. Is it first half? Is it holiday? Who is going to take the holiday? Is it Avowed? Is it Hellblade? I don't know. But we know that those two games are coming because Microsoft told us that those games had a 2024 release date. I said there was going to be one other one, and Clockwork Revolution, if you've been following me, I've been banging this drum for months, is going to be the other. Now, think about this for a second. Next year, not counting what's coming to Game Pass via, deals and indies, you're going to have a new Call of Duty, which is expected to be Black Ops Gulf War. You're going to have Hellblade 2. You're going to have Avowed and potentially Clockwork Revolution, and rounding that off as a single A game, which looks like it could be a Game of the Year contender, Towerborn. I mean, Mav, I don't know how anyone can compete with that.
It's going to be tough, man. I mean, next year's going to be an interesting year because it's a year of hardware as well. Because like Nintendo's going to have their new console. There's still the rumored PS5 Pro, but we'll see if that actually happens or not. Be kind of a weird just a year after releasing a Slim, but overall, like pipeline wise, the only platform to really be excited about if you're talking first party games is Xbox for 2024. There are games announced for PlayStation, but there's not a lot of faith that those will release, and they're also not a lot of them have that big time game hype level right now. They don't have like a Last of Us, a God of War, an Uncharted, Horizon, even like something as big as like a GT or anything like that. It's just they've kind of cleared that slate. So the rest next year, like the biggest game I'm actually hopeful for on PlayStation is Rise of the Ronin, but we've only seen that
looks
once.
Really good, dude. Honestly, that looks really fantastic.
I'm really crossing my fingers and hoping for it. Helldivers 2, I'm gonna play probably on PC because that's where some of my other friends are getting
for
it.
the Last of Us 2 remastered, man.
I don't like The Last of Us, man. I wish I did, but
I
if
liked the
they-
first one.
I know.
I did not like the story structure at all for two. I really, it seemed so disattached while you're playing the game. I really hated where they took Ellie as a character. For me, oh my god, what was the other female's name that she was going up against? The one with the muscles.
Abby.
Abby, yes. Abby became one of my favorite characters in the entire game. And how they ended it with her was so disrespectful if you are character building. Like I thought, like Abby goes from someone seeking vengeance to taking like and again, no spoilers, but like a mother kind of a role, and how they treated her at the end. That end sequence was just, it sucked. So yeah, I did not like The Last of Us 2 at all. I played through it, I beat it, but I did not like it at all.
It's a problem that game even exists because
Yeah, that's what I
resources
was
were
gonna
put into it that could have been put elsewhere, right? So, there's just not a lot to be super hyped about. There's certain things that some people are going to be slightly more excited about than others for PlayStation, and right now they don't have that big heavy hitter. Like this year, they got a pass from a lot of the PlayStation fans for having an absolute trash year just because they had Spider-Man 2 to end it off with, right? I made a post way back in like April or May saying PlayStation has a first party games problem this year because I was looking at it like they don't have anything besides Spider-Man. Like Xbox would have been absolutely crucified.
Oh, they would have been lambasted for sure.
Yeah, like
100%.
2022, like we were even critical about like not enough games for 2022 and stuff like that. It's like, but like this year, like PlayStation just got a complete free pass on only having one big first party game. And then next year, they really, if you look at it, the kind of games that are slated for 2024, I wouldn't consider them like big tentpole type games at all, So what do they really have that PlayStation moniker type game to really push forward to their fans? If people don't have faith in Concord, people don't have Marathon was already pushed out. People don't have faith in Stellar Blade. Like Stellar Blade may have some hype from some people on it, but it's not going to replace like a Last of Us or like a God of War or anything like that, or a Spider-Man, so all these kind of games they have, yeah, it's like cool, whatever, but that's not really what the fan base is looking for there. Where on Xbox, the stuff that we kept telling people was coming, where people were like, Xbox doesn't have any games in the works. What games do they have? We're like, I had a stream a couple years ago where I was like, looked at it and I was like, wow, they have like so many freaking games in the works. It's insane. And they have even more now. Now you add even something like Call of Duty to that. That's just like an automatic, plus all the continue service content for all of their existing games, which keep getting better. Like one of my most exciting things for right now is to see what Halo Infinite does next year. Because this year was so freaking amazing for Halo.
Dude, season 5 is... I'll say this, folks. I don't mean to cut you off, but I got to throw this in there. I have nearly 18 days in Halo Infinite, and I make no excuses for it. I'm a diehard. I don't play a lot of multiplayer, but I play Halo, and I can tell you, as someone that played it way back in the days, my favorite Halo of all time was Halo 3, and right now, Halo Infinite has trumped it tenfold.
Yeah.
It is one of the best seasons they've ever put together for Infinite, and it is probably some of the best Halo that you will ever play. That's why when Matt says he's excited to see what is on the way for Halo Infinite, he is not lying.
Yeah, and you remember when Matt Booty and Phil Spencer did that interview right after the E3 showcase, they happened to mention that they were excited for the future of Halo and what that was all being worked on. And we don't know about like certain affinities thing and all that kind of stuff. We're excited to wait and see what that is. But like 2020
expanded to a bigger project.
Yes, it did. Yeah. So we're all excited, at least on fun speculation about what 2024 brings. I mean, we got games like Avowed, Hellblade 2, possibly now Clockwork Revolution, which was like up in the air. But now that this came out, like it's looking even more likely. Towerborn, which has had some high praise from people that have gotten early looks at it behind the scenes, like Jess Gordon. All these different games. There's a new flight sim supposed to be dropping next year as well, which is really cool. Hellblade 2 is going to be that game that a lot of people have been waiting for. That like graphical showpiece action, third person narrative based type game that's gonna, I think, move the needle in that genre. But what I'm most excited about is what we don't even know, because
And that's the
we,
exciting part.
we got
Absolutely.
those are already exciting enough, right? Like that's a full slate. You give us those, that's more than a full slate of first party releases for any publisher or platform, right? But then you add about what we don't even know, and you think about what they kept talking about, one big game per quarter and all that kind of stuff mixed in with other types of releases. Then you add ABK on top of that. I'm excited for the announcements. I'm excited for potential other shadow drops this year. There was 3 different shadow drops on Xbox. We had the Age of Empires 4
Yep.
Definitive Edition shadow dropped. At Gamescom, we had the Quake 2 remaster just randomly drop at QuakeCon, and then you also had Hi-Fi Rush in January. So we're gonna have multiple events. They talked about it as well. They're gonna have to have more events to showcase more games. They're gonna take advantage of other events to showcase more games. Because of that other email that they sent out, there's reason to believe that they're gonna have some kind of appearance at the Game Awards that might be worth watching as well. So there's lots of reasons to be excited for Xbox next year and in the future. And it's just something that right now the other platforms can't really match up against with the pipeline, especially considering that it's all on Game Pass, which is even more nuts. And then you add on top of that all the Game Pass deals from third parties, and then all of the Game Pass games coming from ABK into Game Pass in 2024. And then all the updates to the live service games that keep getting better. I mean, they're just doing it right now. The problem I have is they don't get enough credit for the things that they've done and that they are doing from many in the games media and all that stuff, right? But like at the end of the day, like if they don't get credit, maybe they just keep doubling down and doing more for us, and that we all win. But I want that same energy towards PlayStation, so that way, somebody like me that owns a PlayStation 5 can potentially benefit off of that concern or whatever that's permeated from the games media and the communities and all that. But it's just when you keep giving them a pass on all this stuff and making excuses, at the end of the day, it doesn't benefit anybody. And Xbox is going to have an easier path down the line. So, I hope that they all kill it. I really think the gaming's better when all platforms have a great year, right? And I have great games to look forward to and stuff. But Xbox is just killing it right now for the future. And I think there's concern for PlayStation, and Nintendo's just going to do what they do.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, look, I'll put it this way. I'm not ringing the alarm for PlayStation because I say this to be fair. Don't count them out. But I am going to tell you though, folks, you got to understand. It took years for Xbox to get where they are now, and now all of those studios that they bought in 2018, 5 years later, are now starting to launch their games. And they're all going to hit. And they're going to have a 5-year dev cycle after that. Sony is in a pickle, whether you want to believe it or not. They are in trouble. They were set on a path to make 12 games as a service titles. That was cut short by the firing of Jim Ryan. I don't care what you say. He could say he was tired of flying. That dude was fired. Okay? That's it. He was fired. And now SIE is running PlayStation. They're making all of the big calls. And one of the big calls that came out of that investors meeting is that they canned 6 of the 12 games as a service. And what that means, what does that mean? And I really meant this for 3-Bit because he's a developer. What that means is that these studios were making these games. Whatever 6 studios those were, they were making these games, and now that has stopped. And now they are going supposedly back focusing on what they do best, and that is making single player, story driven, narrative based games. If that in fact is the case, and that's just starting this year, someone in the chat said, oh, quality over quantity, and that's why PlayStation is better because they take time. And you know something? You may be onto something with that. If that's what you believe, I'm not going to fight you on it. But let's just say, for instance, that you are correct and it is quality. Well, their games take between 5 and 7 years. So I don't know. I'm no mathematician, but if you add 5 years starting this year, that's the next big game you should get that's outside of Wolverine will be 2028. How many first-party Xbox games from the 40 plus studios that they currently have do you think are going to be available day and date in Game Pass versus the crap service that is known as the PSN?
I got kicked back on that take real quick, Boom. The whole quality versus quantity, like that is such an old and tired argument here. Like Spider-Man 2 released buggy as hell this year. The Horizon games have released buggy as well. They are releasing definitive editions and remasters as well to fill in their pipeline. They're getting third-party publishers for exclusives and stuff, right? You're talking about one big first-party game released in 2023 that released buggy. People were flying around the city as sugar cubes, right? Meanwhile, you had way more games released on Xbox, and you can also say, well, quality may be a very subjective thing when you talk about what kind of games you prefer. You may prefer a third-person action-adventure game where you fly around as a sugar cube. I don't know. Maybe that's your bag. That doesn't make it higher quality than something like a Starfield that has hundreds and hundreds of hours of playability in it, where you can literally pretty much do whatever the hell you want to do in a game that like smashes the scope and ambition of any of the first party games that PlayStation has released in the last decade. And that is just a pure fact. The whole quality over quantity thing.
It's a genre preference, Mav. Like it's like, it really is like what the media will prefer is a specific type of genre. Or I mean, we've seen that also with the Game Awards specifically, of how many games are already they're all established IP. None of them are new. Most of them have been established. I'm pretty sure all of them, except for I would argue Baldur's Gate 3 is pretty different from Baldur's Gate 2. But besides that, it's still a sequel to another game. And I feel like with Xbox, there is a variety. That's something they have going for them. They are tackling every single genre almost of games with their different 30-something different studios. So you do have that third person action adventure game, but you also get RPGs and first person shooters, and that's something they're trying to create with Game Pass. And something that I say, but I don't know if everyone will agree with me on, is I believe Jim Ryan was headed in the right direction with putting games as a service games for their platform, because he was starting to see where Xbox was headed with needing content and funneling that money, because they can't really compete on the same level that Xbox can in terms of
just on the finances alone.
Finances. And when if you have I mean, a lot of Xbox's games are live service games. They've been almost dominating in that sector, and that's why I found it was hilarious that Xbox didn't get any game on the ongoing service when they're getting games like Sea of Thieves and constant updates to Halo Infinite just disappearing.
Grounded is another perfect example.
Grounded,
a passion project done by a couple of developers that have now exploded into millions of consistent players.
But that's when you get a variety of different studios able to just try things. But when you are continually just doing things that you're like, oh, this is successful, let me just keep going down this path of just making similar games because that's what our audience recedes to. I mean, over time, is that really successful? Like you're like, yes, I'm doing Last of Us 3, I'm doing another Uncharted, I'm doing this sort of third person action adventure games because this is what we're known for. But if you look at what people actually play on the PlayStation, it's a Call of Duty, it's a Minecraft, it's those live servicey type games. And that's why I was sort of agreeing with where Jim Ryan was headed, because like he was looking at the landscape like, look, these are the games that are actually successful. But the fan base is like, it was kind of backlashing on that. They're like, well, we don't want these type of games, but these are the type of games that people sort of receive to. Like this is something Xbox is doing very well, is having a variety of different games, like what Mav was talking about in terms of quality. When people talk about quality, are you just talking about quality for a specific genre of game? Because if you're because Xbox has a ton of different games that I would perceive to be very high quality, but they're just in a different genre. Like Age of Empires, is there a game like Age of Empires that's specifically on the PlayStation? I don't think there is.
No, there's not.
That it's in another genre, so people may not look at it like that. I mean, we know based on Game Awards and how people usually receive certain specific genres. But in my opinion, variety is king, and I like trying different types of games. Mav likes trying different games. Everybody here on this panel likes trying different types of games where you can jump into. And something Xbox is doing very well is live service based games. And what live service based games does is keeps you in their ecosystem, which in turn rewards Game Pass. So it's just I'm hoping with Sony, I like competition, but if they're going down this path where they're sort of getting away from that games as a service game, I honestly think that's the wrong move. I think they need to start expanding into other ecosystems. The console base is, I believe, the smallest base out of a mobile PC. Mobile is one of the biggest.
The smallest. When you compare it to mobile and PC,
Yep.
It is absolutely the smaller of the three.
Yes, and Microsoft sees that, so they're like, okay, let's expand into these other ecosystems like mobile. That's why one of the reasons they said they bought King was because of mobile and expanding into that space. We know there was plans for Microsoft to start adding their own store for mobile devices. They're doing these things because, like, hey, if we can't add Game Pass on PlayStation, if we can't add Game Pass on the Switch, what are ways we can start to create our own ecosystem or sort of infiltrate other ecosystems as best as we can so we can't be ignored? And that requires us to expand outside of the console space, which is primarily what I believe the CFO was kind of talking about, where now they're making deals with like Nvidia, for example. That's not something any other console provider is doing. They are taking their first party games, which is like Call of Duty, they're expanding into the cloud and just doing these other things so people can jump in, whether they're playing on mobile, PC, or console. Console is still a vital part of their plans, right. But it's more about that. It's more about how you access that. And I think in terms of games of what they have for next year, I mean,
I want to get your hot take on it, but before we get there, we have over 750 people here, which is amazing. If you are finding the channel for the first time, folks, I gotta ask, because I get scolded by Randolph Thor all the time. He says, "Boom, you don't ask enough for the likes, you don't ask enough for the subs." So here we are, we're under 300 away from 14K. If you're finding the channel and you like the kind of conversation that we're having, please consider subscribing. The channel is also available on Spotify and all of your other favorite RSS feeds as well. We did really well this year on Spotify. I just got, they had the end of year thing. I can't believe how many countries actually listen to this show. It's quite shocking and very exciting for me, because this is like a mom and pop kind of a podcast. We don't have a huge crew. I put panels together and we come and talk about video games, and hopefully you like it enough to subscribe. But I have to catch up on the super chats. Whole grain bread drops a very generous $5 super chat, and I completely agree with him here. He says, I'm going to go out on the grain here. That console leak is not a mid-gen refresh. Phil even said a mid-gen refresh is a no-go. I think it was an idea, not a refresh, and I absolutely agree. I don't think there is going to be a mid-generation refresh, and I'm going to tell you why. Larian Studios, who has figured out a way to maximize the little guy, the Series S, the potato, as it's known in the industry, to make also now the PlayStation 5, Series X, and PC versions of Baldur's Gate 3 better. And if Larian Studios could have figured that out, I would imagine that Microsoft is going to ring the alarm bell, say, "Hey, developers, look at what they did. They're a small." And when I say small, there's 400 people there. It's a pretty sized development house, but they're self published, right? So they're considered small, or I would even dare say indie, if you will. And I don't think they need to. I think that if developers actually take the time to learn the ins and outs of the X and the S, they won't need a mid-generation refresh. I actually hope that when they do release one, it is a hybrid. I'm hoping for a Switch like Xbox. I want a Series S on the go, and I want a Series X when it's docked. And obviously, it's going to be a higher power. That's what I'm hoping for. John Wolf drops a very generous $5 super chat, and shout out to John for calling in yesterday while we were live on Primetime and dropping that Latino heat that he is known for. He says, using PlayStation fanboy logic, Sony will soon get out of the TV business because they ain't selling the best. This is fear mongering, aka the Xbox tax. Absolutely. Jay Rembert drops a very outstanding $20 super chat and says, I think it'll be easier for fans if they understand that the only way you can play Game Pass on other devices is if you have a browser. Otherwise, those devices would have to be a Windows-based machine, which Sony and Nintendo are not. And that's as clear as you could possibly make it. Thank you, Jay. Super appreciate that. We have a new channel member, Rectangle. What's going on, brother? Thank you for the generosity. We super appreciate that. Nino Vostik drops a very first of all, he's been a channel member for 1 month, and he says Mav and Boom are 1,000% correct. Halo is fire. It is, man. I got so much recorded gameplay. It's ridiculous. I'm actually still the old man got it. I'm getting double digits kill every time.
Halo's
so yeah, absolutely is. Quan the Terrible, who's been a channel member for 2 months. Quan, I appreciate you. It's very generous of you, and we definitely appreciate that. Nintendom the Otaku drops a very generous $5 super chat and says, Nintendo had 14 releases this year when they're supposed to be slowing down for the next console. Xbox is still trying to catch up to that output. I mean, look, Nintendo was just doing it right, and I bought every one of those, all of those 14 releases. I'm not sorry that I did. I'm a Nintendo kid. I have been since '85 when it launched. When I got it for my 15th birthday, I love Nintendo. My nephew Tyler loves Nintendo, and we love hanging out and playing Nintendo games. Nintendo, they're just being Nintendo. They march and walk to their own drum. They don't need anybody. They don't need PlayStation. They don't need Xbox. They're doing their own thing. They have a new console coming out next year. And I guarantee you that one of the big games that's going to launch right alongside of it is going to be a new 3D Mario. That's probably going to be Game of the Year. So, yeah, Nintendo, I mean, listen, I don't think Xbox needs to put out 14 games. I think if they can stay with a cadence of one per quarter, and we're talking AAA bombs, which we know, again, we're gonna get 3-bits hot take on it. I mean, if next year levies Hellblade 2, Clockwork Revolution, potentially South of Midnight is another one that's up, that got the review from the review board. You're talking about Call of Duty, Modern Black Ops, Gulf War, and Avowed. I mean, and Towerborn. That's a freaking crazy year. And guess what? They're for $17, you're getting that in your service. See, that's what Nintendo can tell you. And we don't know all of their sales numbers. Obviously, I know some of those games sell like millions upon millions. We know that out of all of the platforms, Nintendo's sale console per unit of software are probably the highest in the industry. There's no doubt about it. Bold Alpha Wolfpack, who's been a channel member for 2 months, says, I don't care why devs, or I don't know why devs want to cut all of these exclusives for PlayStation when Xbox sells more software all the time. Yeah, I mean, even Jim Ryan told you folks, that's, sorry, PlayStation players, you're just not enough. You don't buy our software. You talk about it on Twitter, but you don't buy the software and you don't play it. Sorry, that's a fact. 3-bit, let's get your hot take on this. I'm going to get you guys on out of here. Hellblade 2, Clockwork Revolution, and South of Midnight all have been rated. Now, when you get a game, obviously you're a developer, so you understand when a game gets rated, what exactly does that mean? Does that mean that the game is done?
Yeah, I mean, it could mean that it's closer to. I mean, we've seen different examples where someone would rate a game and then maybe it drops like half a year later or a couple months later, or that just means the review board probably seen the game. They are at a stage where you can play through most of the game. You can see the mechanics and stuff like that, and now they are in a polishing phase of maybe polishing up different animations, maybe polishing up different levels. It can signify that you are closer to development, but I've also seen examples where a game will rate and then it doesn't come out till like years and years later. So it can happen both ways, but what it usually does signify is that the game is pretty close to release. And I've always been in the camp where I do believe Hellblade 2 does release early next year.
Yep.
It just seems like it will be. Now, Midnight, that's actually a surprise. South of Midnight, I was not
Compulsion
expecting.
has been working on something for years, dude. Like honestly, for years.
Yeah, they have been working on this for quite some time, and it just goes to show you, like, Xbox has so many different studios. Sometimes I just forget which studio is working on. Like, oh yeah, I forgot Compulsion has been working on a game ever since they released their last title.
I would think 3-bit that a game has to be kind of content complete to get rated, right?
Well, you can still be developing the game. That's what, like, there's been examples where you, like, just because you get content rated, that doesn't mean it's complete. You can still work on the game but it's usually like smaller things. Like if I'm polishing the graphics, if I'm polishing the animation, if I'm polishing that stuff, they're probably going to work on that as long as they can. But it probably means they're not going to shift story sequences. They're not going to
story structure, like level of like kind of ideas of gore and all that kind of stuff are going to be kind of settled, I would imagine, right?
For the most part, it's like they're less likely to change moments in the story, I'm guessing. Like if Hellblade had this really dark sequence and they're like, they want the ESRB to see this, they're like, here, what do you guys think of this? Most likely they're not going to add another crazy sequence. They might add maybe a gameplay segment where you're fighting a boss, smaller things. But I usually when they submit it to an ESRB, it's pretty close to being released. But I've seen examples where they submit it and then they change quite a bit and they have to resubmit it. That's why I'm not 100%.
Well, I mean, listen, it's obviously a fine line, and obviously I appreciate the definition of exactly what it means. But the one thing I will say, and this is why I'm going to side on these games are potentially releasing next year, and here are my reasons. One, we know Hellblade is definitely coming because Xbox told us in their show that it's going to be released in 2024. That's number one. Number two, Compulsion Games has been working on South of Midnight for probably around 4 or 5 years. They started it right after We Happy Few, and they've been hard at work ever since. And as a matter of fact, if you remember that interview with Phil Spencer, when he was specifically asked about what games are you that you know about that we don't, that you're most excited about, and he said, "Can I give you two?" And the first one was Compulsion's game. We didn't know that was South of Midnight. He said what Compulsion is doing over there is amazing. And here we are. You saw it. It looks. I mean, that's the animation, folks. It's going to be dope. And Clockwork Revolution by InXile, when they showed that game last year, I mean, I don't know 3-bit. I'm not a developer, but that game looked really far along.
Yeah, that game is a little bit further along than.
So,
probably think. Yeah.
You know, take it. And real quick, Mav, I'm going to throw this in your DM. This might be a PM in the PM situation. Apparently, Sony's in hot water again.
Yeah.
Now this comes the way of Hazardor Gaming, who is just another one that's just amazing when it comes to dropping news bombs. Folks, he tweeted this: Consumer Protection Agency in Germany has issued a warning to Sony in regards to the terms and conditions of PlayStation Network. Sony has been asked to strike these 3 points and conditions, otherwise it will now be forced to go to court. And the three situations that they're talking about is this: you lose your right of withdrawal for a game purchased if you download the game. They want that removed. Store credits need to be used within 24 months or it's gone. They want that removed. And parents are obligated to pay for any purchase that a child under 18 makes without their permission. They want these 3 points of contention that Sony has in their bylines for PlayStation Network removed, or the Protection Agency of Germany are going to take Sony to court.
Yeah,
I think
it's that they even have those. Like, those 3 points are pretty crazy.
It's pretty. They're ridiculous, but that's Sony. I mean, I told the story before. My brother, and this is going back some years. He had pre-ordered Destiny 2. I pre-ordered an Xbox. He pre-ordered it on PlayStation. That's how much Destiny he used to play. And what wound up happening is about 6 months before it was supposed to come out, he was like, you know what? I'm not going to have the time. I got this new job. I'm probably only going to play it on here. He tried to cancel it on PlayStation, and they wouldn't allow him. And he went to his bank, and he said, listen, they do not want to reverse this charge. The game doesn't come out for another 6 months. I don't want this pre-order. Can you do something? The bank took action, and you know what they did? They banned his account. And he literally, to unban his PSN account, he had to buy Destiny 2. That's criminal. That's your PlayStation, folks. That is your PlayStation, which is why they're in trouble left, right, and center. Let me see. Any more super chats that popped in here? I just want to make sure before we get you guys on out of here. First of all, we're closing in on 800 people here. I hope that you folks enjoyed the conversation. Real quick, for some show notes, tonight I'm going to be a guest with One Bad Mother, with Infinite Umbra and Daniel McGee on the new episode of The Fix. That goes live at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Umbra's channel. I know that there's a PM in the PM, of course, with Mav. I know you guys have a lot to talk about, but Mav, let's get you on out of here. Sell the brand of the Fun Speculation Network, as it's known. Where can people reach out to you on social media, and more importantly, help you cross the 5,000 mark, which I know you're close to?
Yeah, I appreciate it, Boom. Yeah, so there will be no PM in the PM tonight, just because.
Okay.
Yeah, Pong has some stuff going on. But we will be next week for it'll be a special PM in the PM, because we'll be doing the co-stream for the Game Awards for PM in the PM on next Thursday, right?
Nice,
so
nice.
We'll have some other people from Fun Speculation and everything kind of hang out with us for that. But tomorrow we do have Xbox Ultimate Podcast at 10 p.m. Eastern Time. That's every Friday night. And then Mondays we have FSP, which is Fun Speculation Podcast, at 10 p.m. Eastern. And then Tuesdays is Fun Pop at 7 p.m. Eastern. Or sorry, no, that's also 10 p.m. Eastern. PM in the PM is the 7 one. I just screwed this whole thing up, so everybody's gonna be really confused now. But anyway, yeah, Tuesday is also 10 p.m. Eastern time. But appreciate each and every one of you in the chat for hanging out with Boom. Um, Absolutely amazing channel here, and I love to see you keep killing it, man. Your growth on YouTube, on audio, and all that stuff. I saw people sharing their like Spotify
Yeah, that
playlist
was really
feed
cool,
here,
dude. Yeah.
and like seeing your stuff up there is just like it's so cool to see, man. So congrats to you. And then 3-bit, man, I don't want to say too many nice things about you because your ego's already too huge, but love you, bro.
Love you, man.
I mean, listen. First of all, thanks so much for the comments. Yeah, I saw a lot of people tweeting about that. You know, when you look at what people are like their top 5 podcasts, and I'm there with the likes of Xbox Era and the Xbox Two podcast, and it's and XNC with, of course, Colt and Mav. It's incredibly humbling because, like I said, this is really a small, 2-person operation, and it's, to get that kind of viewage, if you will, from the community. It's humbling beyond words. So I'm incredibly grateful that you guys and gals are enjoying the podcast, and that the 5-day-a-week thing is something that I truly enjoy doing it. It's a lot of fun. I look forward to each show, and it's always a challenge to deliver, and that's why I like it. But thank you so much for the kind words, Mav. And 3-bit, sell your brand, brother, because you got a YouTube channel as well. You're hovering just under about 600 subscribers. Love to see you hit a 1K like a lot of us, because that is a real big, powerful moment. Sell it. Where can people check that out? And more importantly, follow you on social media.
Yeah, appreciate that, Boom. If for those who don't know, I started here on Boom's channel on Xbox Factor. It was one of the first shows I started to podcast on. Yeah. Ever since then, Mav bought the exclusive rights here.
Yeah, he did. He did. He outwaged me, if you will.
Yeah. But no, love you, Boom. And
I know,
it's
brother.
been
I love you too.
definitely a ride. My year's been on here podcasting, but you guys can find me on Twitter at i3bit. I just post my opinions. I usually try to come from my industry experience and how that can factor into different scenarios. I talked about the Xbox tax. People call me the tax collector, stuff like that, and that's been fun. But on YouTube, my YouTube is at i3bit. I'm on all most of Mav's shows. I'm on FSP on Mondays. I'm on Fun Pop on Tuesdays, and I will be on Kay Asante's show this Saturday on the Gaming Circle podcast.
Very, very nice.
Trying to podcast more throughout the year and start to do more of my content. And I might be getting into the AAA gaming space again. I'll see if I can tell you guys about that or not, or when I can tell you guys about that. As I worked on Fable and then I took some time off to just do commercial work, I might be getting back into game development. We'll see. Nice. We'll see. But I'll see you guys on the next one. Appreciate it, brother.
Yeah, brother. Definitely appreciate you being here, and of course, keeping us up to date with what you got going on, because obviously you're a huge part of the community, and now you're known as the Tax Man, which is great. But ladies and gentlemen, again, thank you so much for tuning in. We had almost 800 people here. We got one more show tomorrow morning, 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. That would be the new episode of Breakfast with Boom. I'm literally writing that show as we speak, and I'll give you the obviously you'll see me post about it. We go live 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, and we're going to be, there's a lot of news is broken already today that we didn't even get a chance to talk about, which we'll probably move forward and talk about tomorrow morning. And of course, again, before you get on out of here, please consider hitting the like button and share this out on social media. And of course, if you're not already subscribed, please consider subscribing. And a big thank you to all of the generous super chats and new and old channel members. You folks do more for the channel than you could possibly imagine. We are incredibly grateful for the support. And of course, I'm going to close out the show with something that's incredibly important to me. Hopefully one day be important to you. And that's something that my dad taught us when we were kids. And he would say, Craig, treat others how you want to be treated. And also, it doesn't cost anything to be nice. You live by those rules, Craig. I can guarantee you're going to have an awesome day. So take care, everyone, and we'll see you next week on the newest episode of X Vlog Live.